because the lead writer of the report, Professor Shubhe Banerjee, who I've also been in touch with, has said that local authorities and people in the local authorities have to be passionate about making sure that money is drawn down and put in place. In other words, you've got to fight for it, folks.
Yes.
Maybe I know you're not so much up on all the reports and
Like
and everything
Louise.
and all the details. That's Louise's place. But I think the thing from talking with you that I get is you're very much the hands-on person. You've been there. You've got the emotional experience. Now, you were talking about the fact that you spent much of your working life working with people that have dementia, and it is interesting, of course. I again, looking back, we've talked about it far more in the more recent years than we ever did.
Yes.
Do you think that is showing, and are you aware from grassroots level, are you aware of a more caring, loving, people interested in helping folks with
I
this?
think what it is, it comes down, yes, definitely. Attending all the exhibitions, the Christian resource exhibitions, the different conferences that we go to, there's not a day goes past whereby someone doesn't come and ask questions about not the work that we do, not about Pilgrim Homes, but can you give some information about, what happens if we've got someone with dementia? How do we go about finding this information? So it's at grassroots, but you've got, again, going back to one of your earlier questions, when you think that 1 in 3 people now over the age of 80 will be affected.
That 1 in 3
now. 1 in 5 over the age of 65. And then that doesn't exclude, although it is not exclusively for elderly people, there are about 8,000 people under the age of 65 in Britain today with it. So because it's becoming a bigger problem and affecting so many people, it's got this knock-on effect that we all know somebody who knows somebody or has a relative, or there's somebody in the church who's caring for somebody. So it's got this big knock-on effect. And even now, I've had a number of vicars and pastors coming and saying, in fact, not long since, a lady came to me at one of the conferences and she said, it was late at night, it was one that was open till 11, we were just about to shut down and go to bed, and she came running round and she said, "You've just been relayed onto our television screens in the chalets about Pilgrim Homes." She said, "I didn't realise you were here." She says, "I've just had to come and tell you how helpful that book has been." And she said, "My husband's a pastor in Doncaster, and we have a number of people in our congregation who are affected by this problem, and my husband didn't know how to help them, deal with them, and he has found this so helpful, and I've just come to say thank you." So that's the type of thing now that's happening all the time. The awareness is growing. It's as though there's, to me, it's like an awakening. We've been trying to wake people up, and the churches, and suddenly people, lights are going on and realising that we have this vast problem with these wonderful, dear people.
You said something, I mean, what you've basically said there is that because there's been an increase, people are taking
more notice.
But why? Does anybody understand why there is the increase in the numbers?
Because we have a big ageing population.
Is that all? I mean, or is there other factors that move in there?
The research again throws up about healthy living, doesn't it? And
I think personally, and I'm not an expert, I just report on what the experts are saying. I actually think that there is something else involved.
Okay.
And I'll answer this by going back to the other 2 points that I mentioned in response to your question earlier. The other 2 good things that are coming through are partly building on what you said. Popping up all over the world are, at the same time, is the same way of caring for people, which takes person-centred to a new level. Whereas with person-centred, you ignored the dementia to an extent. You didn't look at them as a case history. You looked at the person. So instead of looking at the deficits and the pathology, you looked at the person. Now, the new method invites you to go into the person's inner landscape. It invites you to understand the world that that person is now living in, which is real to them. It's a real world. It just happens to be a real world in the past, because with dementia, people can't process the present, and as the brain damage increases, the things that are left live in the brains are mainly in the past. So they may be living 20 years ago. Now that 20 years ago world is real. It was real, and it is real to them. It's as though if we had dementia and we thought we were in a studio and somebody came in and said, come on, it's time you went back to bed, we would be frightened. And if this happened more and more, we just wouldn't believe it, because to us, this is our real world.
Right.
So it's what they call counterintuitive. It isn't common sense. In the UK, it's been put into a program called SPECAL, SPECAL. I think it's Specialist Alzheimer's Care Early or something like that. And it's a very gentle, compassionate, it's an upside down program to us. And I can explain more about that, but that's because people have cared, because people have loved those in their family who've been affected by dementia. They've instinctively developed a better way. So that, for example, if Janet had dementia and I was looking after her, oh, God forbid I should ever, because,
no, quite
but
like
you
that,
know, and she was 20 years in her past, and she said, and you know, Peter had gone to glory, and she said to me, when's Peter coming to see me? I wouldn't say, but he died, darling, 5 years ago, because she'd been reliving that bereavement
all the time.
I wish you'd been around a few years ago when, because my mother didn't get too bad, but she got, and I found it very difficult. I guess because she wasn't in a home with Christians, and therefore, you know, you tend to, as you were saying, you know, she was a Christian, you tend to think, what's going on here? And, you know, they were almost telling me to play along with what I would call her hallucinations. But see, you put it in a far better way there. You see, what you're saying is, it's not an hallucination.
No.
It's a real memory.
It's real.
And so Dad had died a few years before, and I found it so difficult. And I'm sure there are many others out there that have been through that. It's so difficult to actually try and almost what you feel is unreality because you're living in this world now. What am I going to do? You know,
well, exactly.
How do you do it?
You see, she's not imagining, she's not hallucinating that she's the Queen of England, or that she comes from outer Mongolia, or that she's a space alien. Where she is real.
But it's X number of years ago.
It's X number of years ago. So
I
it's
find that so
learning.
helpful to, you know, to
Exactly,
to
yes.
understand
And it's
it like
trying
that.
to get into where they are and to understand at that moment in time what the problem is.
Yeah.
I just read a story this week that confirms this, where a man shot under the table. He heard a loud bang. It's in the book, isn't it? And he heard the loud bang and he shot under the table. And this lady, instead of saying, you know, what are you doing under there? You know,
come on out.
Come on out. You know,
Yes.
there's nothing. She actually got under the table with him and sat for a few minutes, and he didn't say anything. And then she thought, she remembered he'd been in the war, and it was the bangs.
Right.
And when it turned out, somebody had been clanging saucepans in the kitchen that had so frightened him. He'd gone. So instead of causing him more distress by saying, "Come out," she just sat there with him, and after a few minutes said, I think we'll go and have our cup of tea now. It'll be getting cold.
We better get our cup of tea quick. The all clear's gone.
And we'll get.
And she found that all clear was one of his phrases.
Yes.
And people will have phrases, all clear. And so let's go get our mug of tea before the others have it. And very quickly she linked his past with the living present.
So it's finding that. And everybody is so different. And everybody's walk with dementia is very different. So it's finding the individual and knowing the person.